Well, the Browns completed the tank, but at what cost? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So, the Cleveland Browns lost in definitely much closer fashion than anyone expected them to against the Buffalo Bills. 23-20, a game that they actually had multiple chances to go and take the lead and maybe win this game, as much as I think a lot of Browns fans were hoping that they didn't, with how some of the other results were going around the NFL. But as I said, a much closer game than I think a lot of people expected. In my preview, said, are the Browns going to lose by 20 or 40? They lost by 3 points against a now 11-4 Bills team. So if there's one thing you can, take away from this team is even with the record, they haven't quit, shall we say. They haven't quit on the team. They haven't quit on the coach. And that can certainly be shown with this performance in a close game against a playoff team and a team that is should be considered as a Super Bowl contender, although their run defense might have something to say about that in the playoffs. But a very, very close game. I think anyone that was hoping that the Browns, can complete this tank, this was the best case scenario in terms of you get an entertaining game, a close game, a game that you have a chance to win, but you still complete the tank. But unfortunately, as I mentioned in the intro, at what cost? With obviously the injury to Judkins being a massive downer, obviously on this. I say a massive downer on this victory, but this was a loss, but a massive downer on what was otherwise, draft position wise, a good day for the Cleveland Browns. With obviously suffering that looked like a horrific knee injury. I'll be completely honest, as a Browns fan, as I'm sure everyone did, you immediately went back to Nick Chubb and you thought about his knee injury and, what is our luck that two consecutive pure runners go out with similar injuries, and it did look really bad and it kind of took a lot of the air out of the stadium, a lot of air out of everyone watching. But it has been reported since, pretty much in the last 10 minutes, that it was a dislocated ankle and a fractured fibula, which is of course not good, but if we're being completely honest, is probably the best case scenario when you think about how bad it initially looked. I was thinking ACL, PCL, MCL, ligaments, twisted everything inside there. It looked horrific. So to come away with just a dislocated ankle and fractured fibula, that sounds like the best case scenario. That is an injury that, you can be back with, if any previous things to go on with broken fibulas and obviously dislocated ankles, that should not, jeopardize his 2026 season as a, serious knee injury would have probably done. I mean, at first, if it was an ACL, MCL, PCL and all of that, you're thinking he might not even be playing next year. If he is, it'll be the second half of next season. So for that to be the outcome, that is of course good news. So that is why I wanted to start with that, because as I said, that took the air out of everyone watching. Quinshawn was having a really good game as well, and that took out, just took the air from out of everyone. And so to get what is, as I said, a broken fibula is of course painful, not great. Dislocated ankle, painful, not great. But as I said, best case scenario in my opinion for what it could have been. But back to the game. This game was, as I said, it was a lot closer than expected. The Browns had a really good opening drive, arguably their best opening drive of the season. I say best opening drive, best drive of the season, best offensive drive all year long. They had a couple of nice drives in this game, including the second touchdown drive that they had as well. But the Bills somewhat pulled away in the middle of this game, and then almost as if on purpose, it seemed like they just wanted to let the Browns get back into this game. They were unable to get much going. they looked like a team that was lost at parts in this game. I mean, Josh Allen running backwards and etc., etc. And the Browns, got back into this game, had multiple chances. They had the first chance where they went for it on 4th down and obviously failed to get it. And then they were actually able to get the ball back after a drop in the end zone from the Bills. And obviously Shedeur took a few sacks, and that resulted in pretty much that being that. So an entertaining game, to be honest. Take away the Quinshon injury, this was an entertaining game. We had some pretty fun trick plays in this game. We had, I think, at least 3 or 4 gadget plays from the Browns that worked. In the end of the day, it was a, all things considered, good day in terms of, what you can get for a 3-12 football team. As I said in the preview, I mean, the Browns had no interest in winning these games. Why should you have any interest in the Browns winning these games? The only thing winning any of these remaining 3 games would have done is took you out of a better draft position. Whether your team draft quarterback, team draft offensive line, team draft wide receiver, the better draft position is better for everyone. That's obviously going to result in a better player. That's just usually I say that, usually the case. A shot at getting a better player. So obviously at this point we are, as much as we hate to say it, we are talking about improved draft position. The Browns lost this game. That, of course, helps. The Titans won their game. They did the Browns a massive favour. So that all but secures the Browns a top 2 pick if they lose out. And obviously that is one of the things that a lot of people were going to take away from this game, and that is what ended up happening. So, as I said, other than the Quinshon Judkins injury, getting a close game but still losing with that outcome, I think was what a lot of people probably would have picked if that was the case. Shedeur Sanders in this game, of course, I mean, he started really well. The first quarter was going really well. I was really impressed with Shedeur in the first quarter. I tweeted out during the game that I was really impressed with him in the first quarter. And then it all kind of just went downhill. How much of that was the injury that he had to his finger? I mean, don't get me wrong, his pinky finger looked pretty messed up on his throwing hand. So that is, of course, going to affect and be painful. But how much so, obviously, people can argue about that all day. And obviously after that, really, really positive first couple of drives where I think he was 9 for 10, 100 yards. He pretty much finished the rest of the game with, no more than 50 yards, took some pretty bad sacks and had 2 interceptions. The first interception was tough. I mean, he threw it behind the receiver. There's no arguing that. But it still touches the receiver's hands, and I would be lying, and if I sat here and said that I haven't said before that, as someone that was a goalkeeper for 14 years and prides myself on being a very good catcher of any ball, if it touches your hands, whether it's behind you or not, I've always said, you should be able to catch it if it touched your hands. So yes, he threw it behind him, but still unfortunate and, not exactly his fault that the ball then popped out of his hands into the air directly into the Bills defender's hands. So the first pick was obviously unfortunate. The second pick was entirely on Shedeur. He didn't even see that Bills defender that was just, I don't know how he didn't see him because he was directly in front of him. But obviously didn't see him, threw the ball directly at him, it popped up and obviously got intercepted. So a bit of a hit and miss game for Shedeur. As I said, he started well in this game, but then kind of, faltered out towards the end of the game. Had a chance at the end. I tweeted half jokingly that, Shedeur has a chance here to go play his team out of getting a quarterback. We knew that the Titans were going to beat the Chiefs at this point. So if the Browns were going to win this game, of course, that would have most likely played him out of that spot. So, and of course, he wasn't able to come through at the end, took a couple of bad sacks. And so this was one of those performances that I think probably more on the worst side that we've seen from Shedeur in these 4 starts, but not a performance that makes you go, oh my God, this is a terrible quarterback. But on the flip side, not a performance that makes you go, this is a guy that I'm ready to commit to for next year and forget drafting a quarterback. It kind of feels like that's what I'm saying every single week at this point. As I've said, I don't think it really matters how he plays. I don't think, he's been put in such an unfair situation that it didn't really matter how well he played. If the Browns were in position to do so, they were always going to draft a quarterback, and that continues to be the case. So, Shedeur struggled in this game, showed some flashes as well, but as I've said in the preview, as I said last week, I don't think there's anything he can do anyway to stop the inevitable from happening. I will give a shout out to Shedeur for his uses of his legs in this game. Someone that is not the most athletic quarterback, shall we say, was definitely showing what athleticism he does have. He had a couple of really nice plays in this game, a couple of really nice scrambles. So shout out to him there. And as I said, and any other scenario, a lot of other scenarios, you're going to take things from Shedeur and be impressed with and build on, etc., etc. But when you're in a situation that the Browns are in, it is just an unfair situation, a tough spot, and that's just unfortunately the reality that we're in. So, and then Miles in this game with quite a hilarious turn of events. So, as I'm sure you all know, Josh Allen ran backwards pretty much to his end zone, fell on the ball, and it looked like Mason Graham just about touched him before Myles Garrett got to him, which they initially credited with the sack to Mason Graham. Obviously, as a joke, everyone on Twitter said, "Oh, for God's sake, Mason Graham." Obviously, it's not his fault. You're not going to blame the player for getting that sack there. But of course, Myles coming really close there. And but then it was then announced in the third or early in the fourth quarter that they'd actually changed it, and instead Josh Allen had given himself up earlier when he had obviously turned the corner and saw Myles Garrett there. So Myles was credited with half the sack along with Alex Wright. So unfortunate for Mason Graham, who somehow went from having the full sack to not even getting any credit for that sack. So Myles was credited with the half sack. That takes him on to 22 sacks for the season in 15 games. He is now one full sack away from breaking the record, owning the record outright, which would be 23 sacks, obviously beating 22 and a half, set by Michael Strahan and TJ Watt, and obviously half a sack to tie the record now. Myles doesn't really get half sacks. I mean, this was quite a rare occurrence in this game because usually if Myles is there, he's there. So chances are the next one is going to break the record because, as I said, it's quite rare that you actually see Myles get these half sacks. That's why he usually does finish the year on a whole number. So, one more Myles sack and we're going to get the record. It's been lined up perfectly against the Steelers next week. TJ Watt on the opposite side, the guy that owns the record, tied with the record with Michael Strahan, he's going to be playing on the opposite side. Can Myles go and break his record against, our biggest rivals, the team that we all know the story, we all know the storyline between Myles Garrett and this team with the helmet. It would be awesome if Mason Rudolph can get some snaps in this game, and if he can break the record against Mason Rudolph, that would feel like a full circle moment for sure. But shout out to Myles, one step closer. I've said the last few weeks, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. One sack in 2 games. If Myles can't do that, I am going to be so fucking angry. But I'm not even going to jinx it. Myles is getting the sack record next week against the Steelers. Book it. But the defense as a whole wasn't actually that great in this game. I mean, the numbers don't... I mean, Josh Allen had 130 yards in this game. I don't think he got to 100 yards passing until one point in the fourth quarter. 0 touchdowns, don't get me wrong, 0 interceptions. 2 sacks for 35 yards, obviously, with that running backwards to the end zone play. But the story with this game was the Bills' rushing attack, and I say the Bills' rushing attack. James Cook... with the most unsurprising performance against this Browns run defense. I think everyone going into this game knew that James Cook was going to cook this Browns run defense. This Browns run defense, the second half of the season, has really fell off a cliff after starting the season as one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Losing Malik Collins, obviously, over the last few weeks has made it even worse. And this Browns run defense continues to not be great and continues to get taken advantage of. And that's what James Cook did. Only 16 carries for 117 yards, 2 touchdowns, had that 44-yarder. Just not a great day for this Browns defense. And, one concern that you do have with this Jim Schwartz defense is that this is pretty much every year now that we're seeing this, where, they do seem to get, not that they get figured out, but they do seem to kind of falter towards the end of the season, and they're unable to be consistently a great defense. They always seem to be whether it's the previous years, even some parts of this year's being great at home but not on the road, there just always seems to be something that causes an inconsistency with this defensive performances, and I think we saw another example of that today. But Miles got half a sack closer to the sack record, so that's something we can go for. And obviously my second Super Bowl of the year, which is Carson Schwarzenegger winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. I said in the preview that I said a few weeks ago that all Carson had to do was keep racking up these games of 10 plus tackles and he's going to win it. But then in the last few weeks, Nick Emenwari for the Seattle Seahawks has putting up some performances on the number one seed in the NFC that might make you a little bit worried. So, I said in the preview, if we can just get one more big play, one or two more big plays from Carson to finish off the season, whether it's a big sack or a big interception, then that will obviously, go a long way. And that is what we got in this game. 14 total tackles. So obviously, as I said, continuing to pile up the tackles. He's well over 100 tackles on the year now. Probably on his way to, if not already, breaking the Browns' rookie record. Obviously leads the team in tackles, but also had a big sack in this game as well. So getting that big play, obviously helping for that Defensive Rookie of the Year campaign. This is a guy that I am just so impressed with. I'm so excited. Every week it continues to impress me. He's genuinely playing at an all-pro level as a rookie. Carson Schwarzenegger is the real deal. And shout out Devin Bush, again, continues to keep up his good play. I mean, all the linebackers in this game really, even Mahmoud Diabate had a good game and in spots in this game as well, had a big stop at one point. If the Browns do make changes to this coaching staff, and whether it's the head coach, all of the staff, they need to keep Jason Tarver at all costs, because what he has done for this Browns linebacker room and for these linebackers is next to none, and is really, really impressive. He's basically turned Devin Bush's career around. He's getting all-pro play out of Carson Schwarzenegger as a rookie. We all saw, obviously, what he did with JOK. Jason Tarver is one of the best position coaches on this Browns team. He might be one of the best linebacker coaches in the NFL. He genuinely is that good. So that is something that the Browns obviously have to make sure that they keep if they do make obviously changes to this coaching staff. And then finally, I suppose, shout out before I get into the final record breaker, shall I say, shout out Raheem Sanders in this game. He had a couple of nice carries. Obviously coming in for a injured Quinshon Judkins, was able to keep this running game going, along with Trevion Williams, who, maybe not so much more in the run game, more in the passing game, but he was able to come in and have a nice few plays as well. Shout out to those guys. Shout out to Malachi Corley, who continues to be, the Browns have been searching for someone that they can use on them end arounds for 5 years now. They've never been able to find someone. It looks like they might have finally found someone in Malachi Corley, because he's able to convert those with his speeds. 3 carries in this game for 30 yards, all on end around. So shout out to him as well. He is definitely someone that I want to see back in this wide receiver room next season, and I'm pretty sure we will, because we signed to a 3-year deal that we signed him to I can't even remember. Obviously starting off as on the practice squad. But finally, as I mentioned with the final record break, Miles didn't quite break the record, but he got very close. We did have a record breaker in this game, and that is Harold Fanning Jr. He is now the sole owner of the most receptions by any Browns receiver in Cleveland Browns history. That is across all positions, whether that is a tight end, wide receiver, running back. No player in Cleveland Browns history has had more receptions in their rookie season than Harold Fanning. Only 4 catches for 34 yards, so, not amazing, not jump out of the screen at you, but obviously had the 1 receiving touchdown as well. Also had a rushing touchdown in this game as well. That takes his tally to, I believe, 7 touchdowns on the year, 6 or 7, with obviously 5 or 6, whatever it was, of them being receiving touchdowns, and that being his first rushing touchdown of the year. He is the Browns record holder, as I mentioned, and he is 21 years old. He is I'm so excited about Harold Fanning. I've said this so many times throughout the year, but I have a draft crush. I have a couple of draft crushes every year. Harold Fanning was one of my draft crushes this year. I absolutely pounded the table for the Browns to draft this guy. I didn't care what anyone told me about how he runs, about how he tests, all of that stuff. I watched this guy play. I was convinced that this is an NFL tight end and that he could translate into the NFL. As it normally happens, my draft crushes never end up on the Browns. They usually end up on the Steelers or the fucking Ravens, if I'm being honest. But finally, one of my draft crushes this year ended up on my team. The Browns decided to draft him, and he is being, and I'll be honest, everything and more. I can sit here and say that, he was one of my draft crushes. I was higher on him than a lot of other people, etc., etc. But even I didn't think he would be this good this early. I mean, I thought he would start the first half of the season on the learning curve as a 21-year-old tight end, rookie tight end in the NFL, and he has been our best receiver. Not just tight end, he's been our best receiver this year. I think he leads the team in. He leads the team in receiving yards this year. He's been our best player in the passing game this year, and he's a 21-year-old fucking tight end. It's just so impressive, so exciting. He is the future of this tight end room. I'm so excited to see how his career goes here with the Browns. This is just the start. So much ahead for Harold Fanning, but. That's my thoughts on the game and obviously on the performances. As I said, I mean, look, it was a closer game than a lot of us expected. That's something, all we could ask for, I suppose. The Browns obviously got closer to a top 2 pick. They now jump a spot. They will own the 3rd pick as of right now. If the Raiders somehow win against the Texans, which is obviously very doubtful, they would own the 2nd pick to end the day. And as I mentioned earlier, obviously, the Raiders and the Giants, who are the only 2 teams ahead of the Browns now, they still play each other next week. So one of them will get to 3 wins unless they purposely tie to each other, which, knowing the Browns' luck wouldn't be a fucking surprise. Then the Browns will pretty much guarantee a top 2 pick if they lose out. And then in that case, get Giants win next week and the Raiders somehow... I say somehow, the Raiders could beat this Chiefs team that we saw lose to the Titans today that with their backups don't look very good at all. Then the Browns would have the number 1 pick. So a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but that's where we are. We're on pick 1 or pick 2 watch going into the final 2 games of the season. And if that's what you are on, then the least you can ask for is these games to be competitive and to get good performances out of some of your players. And that is what we got. As I said, good performances out of Harold Fanning, Quinton Judkins before he got injured, but fortunately the injury doesn't seem to be quite as bad as we first thought. Carson Schwarzenegger continuing his defensive rookie of the year campaign, and of course Myles Garrett getting half a sack and now being 1 full sack away from breaking the record outright. Please break the record against Mason Rudolph and the Steelers next week. That would just be chef's kiss. That would put a bow tie on what has been a painful season, and if it can obviously accumulate that with a top 1 or 2 pick, then that would just be the cherry on the top as well. That's my thoughts on the game, guys. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Were you impressed with the Browns' performance in this game? Does this maybe make you think that they might go and fuck around and win one of these last 2 games? Where are your thoughts on obviously the draft stuff and all of that? Let me know in the comment section. But as always, thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to 1 fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing loser Monday, but obviously with a slightly better draft position. Hopefully that Quinton Judkins can come back as quickly as possible. Obviously, my thoughts are with him in his recovery. But most importantly, go Browns.